Hi to everybody. Come on, let's put our hands together. Say hi to everybody joining us at all our locations. We are so glad to have you with us through up into Bali and a whole lot of other places and online. We're so glad you're with us tonight. We are doing something a little bit different tonight. This morning I spoke about pain and what to do with it. And then I said tonight's kind of part two, where I have asked Rebecca Lounder, who is a clinical psychologist, Dr. Rebecca Lounder, I believe, to help us understand a little bit more, unpack a little bit more what to do with our pain, because we all experience it. As a Christian in the field of psychology, understanding the emotions and all of that we have to deal with. And so we're going to have a conversation that I believe is going to be really, really helpful to all of us and at all of our locations, because in this season, we as a church have been experiencing some pain. But beyond that as well, in this season, there is a lot of pain that is happening in our world and coming out of COVID and all kinds of things that people are carrying. And we believe that God has wisdom to help us to navigate this. How do we do this well? How do we handle the pain that we experience in life? And how do we handle it well so that our lives are healthier? We're in a season where we're going to always, I believe, be in that, but we're, as a church, we are really focusing on what it means to live healthy lives. What does it mean to be healthy in how we live, in our relationships, in how we relate to others, in how we do church life, in all of those different things. And so we're going to talk a little bit around helping us get healthy. And I'm really looking forward to it. Greg and Rebecca Lounder have been part of our church, for a long, long time. Before I moved with my wife to Cape Town, they were part of church. I think you guys were involved in Frontline with Lucinda. And so these guys are an amazing blessing to our church. We're really grateful for them. Can you give Rebecca Lounder a big welcome? She's going to come and join me. Come on, let's stand, yes, at all our locations. Have a seat, Rebecca. You guys can be seated. And you tell me about your family, because I should know this, but I've kind of been away and I know you have kids.
Okay, Phil.
Yes.
Well, we've been part of church here for I think it's about 28 years now. And we have 3 children. So
Yes.
Noah, who's 19, Belle, who's with us tonight, she's 16,
Hi,
and
Belle.
Ben, who's 13.
Okay.
And
Fantastic.
2 dogs,
And 2 dogs.
Dash and Maddie.
Dash
And Maddie,
and Maddie. What kind of dogs?
cavoodles.
Cavoodles.
Oh, they're very cute.
Can I just say, there are so many cavoodles in Sydney.
I reckon it's the #1 dog breed in Sydney.
It has to be. It has to be. They are
Designer
everywhere.
dogs, Phil.
They're very
They don't
cute.
shed.
We have 2 adoption specials in South Africa. Spencer and Stanley. Literally, we got one of them from a place called Sidewalk Specials. That's where Spencer was from. And then Stanley, who is only about a bit over a year and a half. Yeah, we got him. He's
Well
also
done.
an adoption special. And so you never know what you get when you get an adoption special puppy. Are they going to be big? Are they going to be small? Are they going to be you just don't know. And anyway,
How are they going?
They are good dogs.
That's good to hear.
Spencer likes to swim out into the ocean with me,
Wow.
literally follows me. If I go for a swim, he will follow me out. He'll jump over waves and swim out. And I have to be careful that I don't stay out for too long, because he does get taken out by a wave or two. And he catches waves back in.
Very clever dog.
He is. And takes after his owner. But
I'm
anyway, Stanley stands on the shore, is a little afraid to go in. Yeah, so he might need some psychological help.
No problem.
We can talk about dog psychology.
We can. Maybe
Anyway,
not tonight.
how long have you been doing the work that you do?
Oh gosh, probably around 25 years.
Okay. And did you just decided this was where you wanted to kind of pursue a career, and then you've got more into it, and you're a doctor now, and tell us a bit about the journey.
Sure. Many years ago, I knew I wanted to help people somehow. And I was actually in South Africa when I became a Christian. And it was during that time there that I knew I wanted to serve God, but also help people find health and wholeness and help people somehow. And I think I've just gone on a journey for many years now, and through my study, through my practice work, I've worked with homeless young people. That's sort of where my first sort of work started in helping people in the inner city of Sydney. And then through there, I guess over time, I've had the privilege of coming alongside many people on their journey through pain often, holding on to hope and wanting to find their wholeness and healing. And yeah, it's just such a privilege. And in my more recent times, I both still do my sort of therapy work, working alongside pastors here, and also I'm at Alpha Crucis College, overseeing the School there of Health and Human Sciences.
Fantastic. So you've been quite involved in working with our pastoral team when there's specific, real significant needs that people have that maybe beyond just having some good pastoral support and need more, professional help.
Yes.
Yeah, so fantastic. And then with Alpha Crucis, the college, they're doing a brilliant work as well.
Yeah, and it's about equipping a new generation of people in counselling and chaplaincy, youth work, community work, responding to trauma, providing supervision, a broad range of work in sort of the social science field, but how we can really equip Christians to do the work that they feel called to do. We sort of equip them, they've got their faith, we want to equip with skill and based on evidence-based practice, so we know that the work people will go out and do is sound and responsible.
I love that, and I love the fact that our faith and understanding our emotions and getting professional help can actually work together.
Very much so. God created us as emotional beings.
Yeah.
So I think it's important we find ways to actually live our lives to the fullness we've been created to, and part of that's understanding and learning to manage our emotions and relationships.
Very good. So we're going to have a conversation about this tonight, talking about practical steps of what to do when you are feeling pain or you're supporting someone who has experienced or is experiencing pain. Because maybe you are going through aspects of pain in your life because of different things that have happened. Or maybe it's not you, but maybe it's a friend of yours, someone in your world. So this morning I started on that and started talking about practically and biblically pain and what to do with it. You were here in church, I did see you.
Great.
How did I go, Beck? I was a little concerned because you were
Bill,
here.
I was ready to take note. No, I took a lot of notes. I actually think you were fantastic. I think what I appreciated was your willingness to go there and to talk about topics that are just so close to the human heart, and the fact that you would actually choose to share your personal journey as well. I think it allowed people to connect that pain is something all of us do experience. When there's love, there's going to be pain. So thank you. I actually think you did a great job and your points were well done.
Thank you. The thing is, when you talk about things that are very real to you and emotional and a bit vulnerable, it is tiring. Like, I was so tired.
I'm sure you were.
I really was, but I went to my relative's house and had some food.
And a sleep.
And a little rest.
A little rest.
A nap.
Well done.
A nana nap.
Nana nap on a Sunday is always good.
How good's a nana nap? All the nanas said. So, so I talked about 4 points this morning. And what I thought would be good is maybe we can unpack some of those points that I shared and hear from your perspective as a clinical psychologist how you see those elements that I talked about. So the first thing I talked about was faith in God does not equal a pain-free existence. What would you say about that?
Well, first of all, I agree. I think, as I said before, God's created us to be like emotional and relational people. And so I think when we have, for all people, we have the ability to love and to feel. And I guess with that, we don't live in a world that's perfect without things that go wrong. And so the result often I think of when we've been challenged in certain situations, we're going to feel pain and we're going to feel hurt, and we're going to have a broad range of experiences. And my understanding of the Bible has been that God promises it in so many different passages that he's alongside us and in us and with us as we travel both the good and the not so good. And often we experience both at the same time. So I think pain is part of can be and often is a part of our journey, but I think it takes great faith as well that we actually will trust that God will be with us on that journey towards our own healing.
And I like how you said you can have both experiences once, because sometimes there's moments when you're sad, and then you can be sad, but then you're with a group of friends and you laugh at something, and then you kind of feel guilty, maybe because you think you should be sad, but you're laughing. Like, can you help us to process how we go through? I don't know if anyone else ever feels like that. It's like, should I be sad all the time? But I'm sad sometimes, but then I have these happy moments and I feel like I really need them, but then I get beyond that and I feel sad again.
Yeah, I think it's important to, the more we can go on a journey of our own self-awareness and we can start to notice the range of emotions we can experience at any one time is very healthy and very helpful for us. I think when we are experiencing pain and sadness, it doesn't mean that's an isolated experience. Often we have the rest of our lives, and sometimes that pain will permeate to a broad range of areas, but sometimes we can also experience more positive or more pleasant emotions at the same time. And I think finding that space to be able to have multiple experiences at one time, even whilst one is in pain, can actually be very helpful, because it gives us a break at times from some of that real challenging emotion.
And what about when people maybe feel like blaming God? Because I think at times we're like, God, this isn't fair. Why is this happening to me? What do you say about that? How do we deal with that?
I mean, I think it would be quite natural. It is quite natural to think those things. I wonder in those moments, so sometimes when we find ourselves in places of blaming or comparing or different things, sometimes it's also that we're maybe challenged or feeling uncomfortable or feeling a lot of discomfort or distress with the emotion that we're feeling. And rather than trying to work out where it's come from, it's helpful that we can learn to sit with some of that emotion, and we actually start to understand that emotion, I mentioned before, being more self-aware. I think as well, learning compassion for ourselves is very important. It makes sense that we would feel those things and sometimes have those questions. However, I do think the more in which we can learn to sit with uncomfortable emotion, from there we can find healthy and more helpful ways to manage that emotion.
How do you become, it's just a big question, but how do you become more self-aware in these moments?
I think, and it's a good question, because when we can pause and even just try to name or identify some of the emotions we might be feeling. It could be happiness, it could be joy, it could be sadness, frustration, anger. When we can actually, often we can feel a lot of distress, or we can feel a lot, but we can't always articulate what emotions sort of are sitting within that. And so what self-awareness does, it allows us to identify the actual emotions, or that we're even experiencing emotion. Sometimes it can feel so intense we want to do something to get rid of it. But when we can pause and notice what we're feeling, we can then use different methods that we can discuss to actually write out some of that challenging emotion, rather than trying to just get rid of it. Because sometimes blame and even comparison is a way to just try to get rid of negative emotion or painful emotion, rather than trying to write it out a little bit. And I think when we can write it out a bit, it talks to the resilience of the human heart and the human soul as well, because we start to learn we can manage difficult emotion. It doesn't have to overrule us. Sometimes it feels so big because it is intense. That though can't be compared to our capacity to manage that is something quite different.
So learning how to manage what's going on. Yeah, we're going to talk more about that. Okay, so the second thing I shared was some pain doesn't go away. And like Paul prayed, I talked about in the verse in Corinthians where Paul talks about prayed 3 times for this thorn in the flesh to go, this pain, but God didn't remove it. Some pain doesn't go away, but it doesn't have to control you. How do you confront your pain without allowing it to become the only thing you are focusing on?
I think just what we were just chatting about, it kind of builds on that. And the next, like when we can start to identify what's happening, possibly even where that emotion might be coming from, which could be our interpretation of the experience that we're having. Often emotions are a result of the way in which we've experienced or interpreted, or the perspective with which we would see different experiences. And so I think when we can sort of pause long enough to understand maybe where some of that emotions come from, And we can learn then to find more helpful ways to manage. And one of those might be, allowing ourselves to have positive experiences, or even being able to be present and being in the moment while we are experiencing challenge and pain as well. Sometimes it's about taking a break and having a nice cup of tea. Sometimes it's looking outside or listening to nice music, going for a walk, talking to a friend, praying, whatever it might be. It's allowing ourselves some opportunities to have some comfort, even whilst we might be feeling pain.
Having a rooibos tea.
A rooibos tea, there's nothing like it.
I don't know if
and a rusk.
And a rusk. A rooibos is a very good tea, guys, full of antioxidants. Who's had a rooibos tea? Look at you all. Wow, that's fantastic. I love it. If you haven't, it's very good. With a little bit of honey, no milk, just a little bit of honey. And it's a very good thing. So you know about...
I know about rooibos tea.
Part of how you got saved. You had a rooibos tea, you thought, Lord Jesus,
I need to find the Lord now.
God made the rooibos tea. I need the Lord. Okay, I do have a side question.
Yes.
How does your husband ever feel like you are psychologically analysing him? And how does he cope? Maybe I should be asking Greg that question.
Maybe many moons ago, we're very real in our house.
Right. So your kids, because here's what my kids do. My kids sometimes, like if I try and give them advice, they go, "Oh, thank you, Pastor Phil." And it just, I'm like, "Oh, Dad's got his pastor voice on again." Anyway, I have to deal. I'm going to need some counseling about that because I'm just trying to be their parent and help them and give them wisdom. And Pastor Phil is in the house now. It's not Dad anymore. How do we deal with these things?
Oh gosh, I think sometimes we have to really rein it back in sometimes and make sure we're a parent in the house.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I'm trying to be.
Well, you keep trying.
Yeah, thank
At least
you.
you're aware of it. You're aware of it, Phil.
Awareness.
So you're aware.
Yes.
See, it's a step in the right direction.
My kids make me aware. They add to my self-awareness.
They do. They ground us.
Any parents know what I'm talking about? Any kids helping their parents with their self-awareness? Yeah. Okay, so pain doesn't go away. Here's a question about that. Some people would think, okay, I'm going to get professional help. I'm going to see someone like you. I've been prayed for, it hasn't gone away, but if I see the counselor, the therapist, it's going to go away. But they might see you, they might get prayer, but it doesn't go away. And I think there's been a time where we've thought there's something wrong with me. I prayed and prayer didn't get answered, or, what's wrong with me? What do you say to that?
I think, first of all, that's where it's really important, the place for self-compassion, which is to understand, be kind to yourself, that sometimes we're not going to be able to find all the answers. I think in a therapy or a counselling environment, it's often about helping somebody or coming alongside somebody that they can start to understand what the pain means to them, their connection with the pain, possibly finding alternate ways to manage the pain. Definitely we try to work out the source of pain and try to having opportunities to work through that. But I think sometimes it's being so careful, just like we would encourage someone to, not to find themselves in a place of trying to blame, being very careful not to blame oneself. And that's where I think kindness, self-kindness is actually very, very important. And it's about understanding that pain is, and sometimes it's changing our perspective, I guess, and our connection to pain and our ideas of trying to get rid of it versus trying to find helpful ways to, our connection with it.
Yeah, because I talked this morning about how my mum and dad passed away, and I watched my mum's memorial service, which was beautifully done. Donna did the service, but I was watching it from South Africa, and the hardest moment for me was when the people who were carrying the casket with my mum's body carried that, and I thought I should be doing that. And that was a really hard moment. And so when I think about that moment, I'm sad. But then I don't want to live my life sad, but that's a sad moment.
Sure.
And when I think about my dad, I miss him, and that's a sad moment. And these moments don't go away, do they?
They don't.
But you don't want to live in them all the time either.
No, but I think, Phil, it sounds like it also represents the love you had for them and with them. And if anything, it allows you to connect to the beauty of the relationship you had with your parents. And it allows you to, I sometimes think sadness and pain, it's sort of, it's proportional to the depth of love you might have had for somebody or something as well.
So it's okay to live your life and still have some moments that when your mind goes to them, there's still sadness.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
But maybe even in those moments, remembering some of the happy times and the beautiful times you had with those people as well.
Yeah, because I think that's sometimes the hard thing to go, okay, my faith says I should be hopeful, which I am. I should be joyful, which I am. I should be excited about the future, which I am, all of those things. But then I also think of these moments along the journey, and there's the sad moments, but it's understanding how to, I suppose, deal with that in your heart.
How to sort of, connect with it and then let it be. And how do you find meaningful ways, I think, to acknowledge, well, especially in the situation with your parents, finding meaningful ways to ensure you stay connected to your memory of them and the experiences you had. Because if you run away from that pain, the risk is that you run away from the good parts as well, and you don't want to do that. And I think, that, as I said, the pain, it's sort of, it's proportional to, the meaning those relationships have had.
Yeah, and I know because my dad had a brain tumor, a glioblastoma, and so he had a slow process, which is horrible, until he passed away. But on the other hand, that enabled me to spend time with him. And I made sure, because I was living in South Africa and he was over here, I made sure that whenever I was with him, I would ask him questions, because I wanted to know stories and understand his life. Why did he make certain decisions that you don't know about your parents? You're like, why did you choose this career? Why did you do that? What happened to your family? Why did you do this? And I wanted to personally understand that. And so I really was intentional about asking all of those kind of questions, which I think was really good.
And that's
and
another
helpful.
thing you were able to do then with the pain, was find meaning.
Yeah.
Because it actually prompted you and it sounds like it prompted you and encouraged you to sort of ensure you did ask those questions and spend that quality time with your dad.
Yeah.
And that in itself then, it's another way in which out of that pain, and also with time, you know what I mean? Like, I guess you've found out other aspects of your dad and got to know him in a deeper way, because you weren't, instead of avoiding the pain, you sat with it and you're able to engage in a meaningful way.
So that pain can actually prompt us in a good way.
And motivate us.
To engage, to connect at a deeper level, to look at things beyond the surface. Yeah.
Rather than it being just purely an emotion, you're actually looking at what it's representing. And that was, in your case, do you know what I mean, like the love you had for your parents?
We're just having a counselling session up here, guys. So you're all joining in. All right, number 3. We often hide our pain or deny it, even to ourselves, because we don't want to show vulnerability. And I talked about how for guys in particular, we physically hurt ourselves. The first thing we do is we just get back up and say, I'm fine. We may have broken most bones in our body and be in absolute agony, but the first thing that comes out is, I'm fine.
Maybe we just add another little word in there, I will be fine.
I will be fine, So what are some ways you've seen people try to avoid processing pain? So people avoid it, and why is that destructive?
I think any of us can want to avoid pain. You sort of think back to those first memories of the Band-Aid being ripped off. Like, we're doing it for your kids. And it's like, you don't want that experience. However, I do think what can happen is that when we sometimes can doubt our capacity, I think, to manage pain. It's not a pleasant experience. And we live in a world, I think, where we're often accustomed to the idea that we can avoid pain if we think in a real practical way. Often in any kind of moment, if we feel discomfort, we find ways to get rid of it. If we're cold, we put on a jumper. If we're hot, we take off a jumper. If we're hungry, we eat. We don't often sit with a lot of discomfort in a modern sort of world. We're taught even with technology, like if an app's not loading quick enough, we change apps. Like, I know it's not a lot of discomfort, but it can be annoying. And so through the process of that, we can start to learn that avoiding pain or avoiding discomfort, like, is worth it. And I guess what can happen when there's emotional pain and even physical pain, we can find ways to avoid it because we either might doubt our capacity to be able to manage that pain. We might be concerned what other people would think of us because we aren't like perfect maybe, or we might be upset at ourselves that we thought we were going to be able to do things and we can't. And I guess that's where the point of vulnerability comes in, is that that's acknowledging that we need the support possibly of another, or we need help. But I guess, back on your question, we can avoid pain for many reasons, but I think what it is, again, that's where self-awareness is so important, because if we can, or self-reflection, if we can pause and seek to understand what it is we're trying to avoid, that can be helpful. I think in the last couple of years, so many people have experienced pain and distress, and we see so much on the TV, even at the moment when we're sort of looking at issues from natural disasters to war. There can be so much we can be exposed to, and I think that in itself can really impact the human heart after a while. I mean, when we look at issues around trauma and distress, the human heart can sometimes feel like it can only take so much. And I'd say, even with how much we see and how much information we have access to, we sometimes need to monitor that as well. However, at the same time, we can also find ourselves in a flurry sometimes, I guess, with pain, with distress, with being overwhelmed, and we think we should be able to manage it, or I've prayed and it should have gone away, or whatever these sort of rules are that we have for ourselves that shows us that we should be beyond distress or be beyond pain. That if we're faithful enough, we should be able to be. But really, we have to be so careful with those shoulds and musts we put on ourselves to actually find healthier ways to actually acknowledge distress, pain, trauma, whatever it might be, and then find healthy and helpful ways, be it developing things for ourselves or reaching out for support.
Yeah, because what I find is that we all experience pain. That's the reality. It doesn't matter who you are, there's going to be different moments in your life where you have to deal with pain. But we don't want to be vulnerable sometimes because we can feel like I'm the only one. Mm-hmm. So we feel a little bit ashamed, like no one else seems to be dealing with this. I'm the only one who's dealing with this. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I shouldn't really tell anyone. I should just get over it. Everyone else seems to get over it. Why can't I get over it? And so, sometimes there's a shame associated or a feeling of weakness. And then we try different things to numb the pain. So, we go to things that are self-gratifying, which could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be pornography, it could be a lot of different things, which, because we have pain, we're trying to deal with it somehow, but we go to these things, and then sometimes we feel more pain. Definitely. And we feel worse, and then we don't want to tell anyone because it's just like more and more shame. And how do you get in a cycle like that? And a lot of people do. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying I think that's pretty real in society today. What do you do when you're in a place like that?
Yeah, I think as well, Phil, just before we get to what do we do, I think people can find themselves doing those things to deal with the pain. I think as well in our everyday life, we can avoid pain daily, even in the way in which we might choose not to be present in the home, getting caught up in busyness, getting caught up in details of things, getting caught up in social media, getting caught up in binging shows. Again, there's nothing wrong. In our work,
like
definitely.
you can bring your work home and you're always looking at phone, taking calls, not spending time, because you need to have emotional energy if you've got kids to be present with them.
And it can be hard
in your
work.
marriage, all of that.
Definitely. And so you can have, and then again, there's nothing wrong with watching. I always say the thing about binging shows, there's nothing wrong with watching a whole lot of shows. But if you're doing it and you're not even aware, you're getting caught up in it.
My hand's up.
Yeah, it's fine,
I'm a
Phil.
binger. I will watch like the latest Drive to Survive on Netflix is out, and I'm a big fan. Anyone else a fan of that one? Yeah.
I guess it's just knowing why you're doing it. And if you're doing it to chill out and to take some time out, then that's actually okay.
Yes.
It's what happens is anything that takes us, if we're actively avoiding pain, rather than acknowledging it and trying to find ways to manage it and get help, that's the little part that's important.
So if you notice, okay, I'm doing some things that I know aren't helpful, and it's going, why am I doing that? There's something I'm avoiding, something that I need.
And sometimes that's when talking to a friend is so helpful, talking to somebody you trust, and sometimes it's actually reaching out to professional help as well.
This statement, and I shared it a few weeks ago when I was preaching about God's love and God's grace for all of us, which is we have a deep-seated desire to be fully known and fully loved. And to be fully known and fully loved is a very vulnerable place. How do we create that? How do we be that? That's a hard one because, if I'm going to talk to someone, how do I know that I can trust them?
Yeah, and it's it can feel very risky and very vulnerable to do that. And I think it takes a lot of courage and for a person to be very brave. I think trust builds over time with other people, and it can be through friendship, it can be through sort of marriage or partnership, it can be in a broad range of ways in like a community that somebody might be a part of. I think it's understanding what does it, like a person, it's important we need to understand what trust means for us and with the other person that we're learning to trust with. And again, it's sharing parts of ourselves, but not having to share everything possibly to start with, but it's actually saying, what do I need even to build trust over time?
So that takes time. I think that time is a big one. Like I have one friend who, we've known each other. He went to Castle High, which was a long time ago.
That's a long time
Does anyone know where Castle High School is? It's just opposite Castle RSL, next to Castle Bowling Club, down the road from Castle Towers, in Castle Street, Castle Hill. Anyway, we're still mates.
It's great.
Over many years. He is a Christian. He's been in ministry. He's not in ministry now, but he's not in our church. But we would say he's a friend who knows everything about me and loves me anyway. And there's only a few of those friends.
There's only going to be a few of those ever.
But that's taken years of just being that for each other. We don't see each other all the time, but we actually have in our diary a time when we're going to call each other and just talk. Yeah.
And that's a very unique friendship, but it also sounds like you've been able to really, again, over time, build that.
Yeah.
And you've had to, my guess is there's been a to and a fro of learning what it means to trust each other.
Yeah. And it was something we both had to commit to, because you can't be into a relationship, friendship, connection like that if the other person's not going to commit to that at the same level.
It sounds like that mutual commitment to the friendship's really important.
Yeah. So how do people develop things like that? Like, I believe church should be that place.
Definitely.
Like, where you find those friends. This friend has a faith that, like, we're both full on love Jesus. So, and we're committed to each other finishing well. So that's kind of the goal.
That's wonderful. And I think that in itself that's some good keys for people already. I think in a church community, sometimes it's going to commence with maybe a common interest that you might have with somebody, and that's how you first get to connect. Do you know what I mean? And then it's again longevity and it's experiences that you share, that shared experience when we go through different challenges of life, how we're there for each other, and that faithfulness of friendship is where trust grows over time. It's even discussing what does trust mean with each other.
Do you think you have to initiate it?
I think it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah. You got to be intentional about these things, don't
Extremely
you?
intentional. And again, when we're intentional, we're present and we're intentional, and you have to put in, it does take, now sometimes it happens quite naturally, but at the same time, for a relationship or a friendship to become even more transparent, or for there to be a greater closeness, that takes vulnerability. And so that vulnerability can take time. And I would say it's appropriate that it takes time.
Do you think if you're trying to protect an image, you're less likely to do that?
I think if you're trying to protect an image, if that's a possible then barrier between honesty and vulnerability, well then it would become a possible problem.
Can I just talk to you? This is like, I'm going to talk about pastoral world, okay? Because when you're a pastor, it's kind of a weird world, all right? Just know, whatever you do, it's awesome, but pastors sometimes have a weird world. And here's what I'm going to say is you get people say to you, and it is greatly appreciated, things like, man, you've changed my life, okay? Text message, something like that, and it's so appreciated. But you know, the thing is, when that happens, you can start to believe, I really changed someone's life. Now, if you're a fantastic accountant, you don't normally get a text on Monday or Tuesday saying, you changed my life. And maybe there should be more accountants who get that, you know. Shout out to all the accountants, Stephen Crouch over there, you've changed my life. But sometimes when you're in a public profile role, and I'm just talking about this, you can start to believe that, oh, that feels good. I need to, that you feed on that and you need that. And it can be dangerous.
Can be.
Yeah.
And I think that's when, number one, you've acknowledged it.
Yeah.
So that's where self-awareness again. You know, when we can be self-aware, then we can self-manage and look after it, but we can also maybe take it to that trusted person to even be able to say, I notice I'm doing this when I get these sorts of messages. And so therefore, again, there's nothing wrong with praise and gratitude from other people. That's encouragement.
You need it. We all need it.
We need encouragement. However, it's the connection we have to it that's really important to consider. And when we're trusting that possibly, or needing that more than possibly our relationship with God or the friendship we have with another, that's when it can get a little bit problematic.
Yeah, and I think you can see that with social media, for example, when it's like, man, I need to have likes, I need to have my profile, I need to have my followers, I need to have all of that. Again, you know, that's something, how do you deal with that?
Well, I think, again, it's acknowledging what that means. I think when a person can be grounded in who they are, and when you can have a strong sense of identity in who you are in God and who you are as a person, what your values are, you have this internalized sense of knowing who you are. The need or the sense of gratification from likes and that reduces, because it's not like you're needing that to say, hey, I'm great or I'm good or whatever it is. It might be, oh, that's encouraging and that's great to hear, but our connection to it would be different.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to, that's to me why our faith is so powerful, because when my identity is secure in who I am because of Jesus, it doesn't matter. You know, other things that try and creep in and become what gives you your value and your worth, they don't matter, because you know you're already valued and loved by God. And all that Jesus did was because of his love for you, and you live from that place. It's a very freeing place.
Definitely is.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, number 4, having the courage to confront your pain will ultimately bring freedom. I talked about that. How do you know when you are free? Okay, because I think that's a big question.
It's a really big question.
And how do we help people we love who are in pain while also maintaining boundaries? Because sometimes people can be in real difficulty and they're just kind of there all the time and can be overwhelming.
Can be.
Yeah.
Well, I think your first one about freedom, again, I think it's good to understand what freedom might be for, like, individually. I think we need to identify what freedom might look like for us. I do think it could be to do with the fact that we wouldn't feel so burdened by different things, that there's a sense of joy in our heart, even in the midst of and acknowledging that painful or challenging situations will come our way in life. It's knowing that we've got maybe a different way that we're going to be able to connect with it and a different way to manage it. I think freedom, often there's hope, there's joy, there's a whole lot of, I guess, more pleasant experiences that would go with it. But I think it's that sense of wholeness or connection with God, and maybe it's to do with the connection and the relationship we have with God as well. I'm curious what you would say freedom is too, Phil.
Well, I believe it's when you don't need something to make you feel better. So, you know, if we talk about aspects of addiction, it's something I have to keep going back to. But it's like, actually, I don't need that. You know, that's when you know you're free. You may still have sadness about a pain, but it's like, oh, I don't need that. I'm actually feeling good about who I am. And that could be anything, whether that be, you know, alcohol, whether it could be overeating or, you know, porn or things like that. It's like these things come in a way to try and, rather than help you heal from the pain, they distract you from the real issues. But when you're like, I'm free from those things, so, and I think it's also your reaction. So maybe you had an issue where you reacted and you got angry. And suddenly you're like, man, I'm more patient. I think patience is a big decider about freedom. I think when you're patient with people, it says a lot about who you are.
Yeah, and I think within that comes often that skill as well, learning to self-regulate, because rather than in that moment of getting sort of agitated or whatever it might be, you're sort of pausing in the strength, that strong emotion, and you're choosing to ride that out, and then you're developing patience with that.
Not reacting, not trying to prove things, not needing the approval of others, feeling secure in who you are. All of those things you start to feel, you've got this peace about who you are.
I was going to say peace is so important.
Yes. Yeah, you're not agitated, you're not on edge, you know, you're not kind of annoyed at little things, you're not getting frustrated.
And sometimes, because that sounds sometimes like, how do I do all of that? But I think sometimes it's even noticing that. So it's noticing distress and choosing not to react to distress. But even when we can notice distress, that's self-awareness again. But when we can notice distress, we can choose how we're going to engage with it. We actually have the capacity to go, am I going to get agitated, frustrated, annoyed, angry? Or maybe, although I might want to have an outburst, I'm going to actually try to pause and actually try to ride that emotion out a little bit and make an informed decision how I do want to engage, and how I want to respond to my kids when they're asking 100 questions at once, or how I'm going to respond to a boss at work, or how whatever it is that we're needing to respond to, or when we're feeling pain, how am I going to choose to sit with some of that challenging emotion yet still try to have my day?
Yeah, I feel there are things that help us with this. So I would say, really understanding my relationship with Jesus. What does that mean? What does he say about me? So understanding that's key. Having the right friendships that are honest, real, and loving, and I can share, and they can, and it's trusting and confident, and there's confidence. I think daily rituals. So I'm kind of a bit of a intentional discipline person because I felt I had to. Because I talk about my mum this morning and, you know, struggles with mental illness, and I wonder, could I go there? And I feel like I could. And so there are things that I do. So I get up and I have a routine where I will work out, and then I will go and jump in the ocean, and then I will read my Bible. And I have this routine that I continue to do as regularly as I can, because it just sets me up in a good mental state. Routine
is foundational to well-being.
Yeah.
Routine and regular practice is actually so important.
Okay, so I'm on the right track. Good. Margin, you know, so how do you help people? You need margin, I think, who you love, but they're kind of coming at you with their pain.
Yeah, look, I think, again, we're created to be relational beings, so we're going to be in relationship with different people. And I mean, at different stages, we will experience different pain, or the people around us will experience pain. And it's about how we come alongside people. It's not our role to sort of take someone's pain and say, hey, I'm going to take it all for you. It's about how can I support you as you learn to manage it. And I think that's where you mentioned before, boundaries are so important, because again, and what a boundary would mean in that sense is how can I help you, or how can I help you right now? I can help you, in the evenings, or I can do things practically on a weekend. I'll text you, in the mornings to check in on you. But also it's about working out who else might be in that person's support network. Because again, relationships are usually more than just one-to-one. I mean, we have relationships with a range of people. And then sometimes with that, depending on the situation that a person's experiencing, sometimes we do need more support for a period of time, or possibly for a long time. And it's understanding and pausing long enough to work out what the support network for, like what support network I might need in a particular time in my life, or you might need, or other people might need.
And the thing is, there are also others that can help.
Definitely.
You don't have to take it all on yourself.
Yeah.
There are some people who are very empathetic and they want to help. Their heart breaks, but maybe there's only so much they can do. And like our church has so many courses that can help people with, marriage, the pastoral care team, marriage, raising kids, if you've been through the pain of abuse, divorce, all of these different things. We actually have courses for all of that. So you don't have to do it all yourself. There are people you can point others to and say, hey, I think you need this, or a professional counselor as well. There are so many things we could talk about. Like I was thinking about, when you're controlling everything, how some people is like, I got to control everything in my world, and that's unhealthy, and I need to learn to be patient, I need to let go, and I need to trust. Dealing with all of those things internally, they're all huge issues, aren't they?
They're all huge issues, but they're all ones as well where there are, the more we can discuss these things, I think the more we normalise them, and therefore the more we can continue to be brave to actually speak out about them. Yeah. Like I think this morning when you're able to share about your experience growing up, to me it gives permission that it's actually okay if others of us have had challenge that we might need to come and chat to someone about. Because I think the more we can normalise discussions and conversations around emotional, social well-being, spiritual well-being, whatever it might be, areas of well-being, the more honest we can be with each other, the more we actually start to head towards healing and wholeness.
Well, it's like James said, confess your sins one to another, to each other, and you will be healed. So that healing process from having that real, genuine, loving, trusted relationship, so important. Okay, we're going to conclude. We've gone over time. I knew we would. I knew this would happen. So just for the young people, because we have a lot of young people on Sunday night church, often in teenage years in particular, there can be quite a bit of pain. You're growing up, it's like a lot of, teen angst. It's a real thing.
It's a significant time of transition and change.
Yes.
And a couple of generations ago, adolescence wasn't even considered a thing. You're either a child or an adult. And in the last few generations, we're really identifying that adolescence is a significant period of time for young people. Yeah. And it's actually so important for young people to be seen, to be heard, and to actually find support and have people believe in them.
So what about if you're here tonight and you feel like, I don't know if I could talk to my parents, but there's things I want to talk about? What is there available for young people?
Yeah, look, there's a broad range of things, and sometimes at home it could be about maybe getting to have other experiences that are pleasant with family members, such as at least watching shows together or eating together or spending quality time, even if you can't quite talk to parents yet. I do think as well it's important for young people to know there could be youth leaders, there could be people at school, there could be other trusted adults in their life that they could talk to. And then again, if a young person does come to you and you might not have the answers, it's about how we can together find those answers and find the people to talk to or find the support that they need.
And can I say that's what I love about church, is that church is a multi-generational community. So there are older men and women who can be trusted
Yes.
advisors, mentors, whatever term you want to use, for young people who are saying, man, I need someone to talk to, but I'm not sure who there is, but church can create that environment, and I love that.
I love it as well. And I think as well, possibly there's the way in which then we can help where if home can be a place where parents can be talked to, maybe it's about then learning to talk together and finding ways in which families can communicate more with each other.
Yeah, beautiful. How do you look after yourself in seasons of pain? So particularly as a teenager, we're talking to young people here. How do you look after yourself?
Oh, look, I think, again, it's understanding what you need for you and healthy ways to look after your heart, healthy ways. I think boundaries and learning how to establish boundaries is very important. And also then finding ways to engage and have healthy and helpful ways to communicate with other people, be it friends, be it leader, like a youth leader in a church context, to a teacher.
Yes, finding those people. And final question, what can we do this week to take steps forward if we are dealing with pain?
I think
Practically.
Oh gosh, there's many things. But I would say one is just, first of all, thinking about what we've discussed tonight and working out if there's what is one thing you could do. I would encourage people that even just pausing in your day to be present and learning you can be present, and that might be like when you're having a cup of tea, your rooibos or your Earl Grey, whatever it might be, that you actually even just savor moments. Just be present in different moments, like pause sometimes, even at work, to think what's something that you really are enjoying about work. When you're at home, like taking moments just to engage in your day, I think could be something really good to actually do.
I mean, just those simple things, be present. If you need to, I also do a little bit of journaling just to write down what you're feeling, and sometimes just to help your mind get clear. All of those things I think are really helpful. And we just want to say to everybody, hey, whatever your battle is, you know, God places us in families, so we don't have to deal with it on our own. And I know for some of us here, it might be overwhelming to think you could talk to someone. But the reality is, I believe God has placed you in a church family where there are people who you can trust, who you can be confident that they will keep your confidence and that love you. And all they're going to do is help you to find freedom with regard to whatever that pain is that you might have, because God puts us in families like that. And when we understand that and we know His love towards us, it really can bring about significant change in our lives and help our lives move forward. And I pray that we will be a church like that, and we'll continue to be like that, and we'll continue to grow in that, because all of us are on the journey to being that kind of friend for somebody, aren't we? I want to be that kind of friend for others. Anyone else? You know, I mean, I may have some pain, but I also want to be someone who others who have pain feel like I could trust Phil to talk to. And, you know, he's going to have my best interests and want the best for me and just want to see me healed and whole. That's what we want for each other, hey?
Definitely.
And if we need professional help, what do we do, Rebecca?
Look, I think going to your GP is the first port of call, because they can refer you then to a psychologist or counsellor and help work out what your next steps with you, what your next steps could be. And even, you know, like recently, like out of COVID, and that the government have actually put in a lot more resource to mental health support through different initiatives, but also through sort of psychologists and other places. So check in with your GP or your doctor, and from there you can get sort of a referral to see somebody. Beautiful. And make use of those services. We're trained, we're equipped to come alongside people in their pain journeys.
And I love that there are people of faith like you who are in this space, bringing both, you know, the God element to it and also the practical understanding of how to deal with this, plus all our different courses that we have as a church, which are available and there for people to go, hey, I need help. And they are a key part of what we do and who we are as a church. So fantastic. We could have talked about a whole lot more, but thank you, Rebecca. You have been amazing. Come on, can we stand and thank Rebecca?